Who are the best available free agents left on our Dynasty rosters? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Magdziuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Magdziuk. Check her out on Twitter at Kate Magdziuk. Kate, we're going to be drafting all of the free agents left in the NFL and talking about their dynasty value. Are you ready for this exercise?
I am ready. This is dynasty startup season, and you might be in the middle of your drafts right now, and there's a bulk of really interesting players that are just sitting out there on the free agent market. And what does that mean for dynasty value? What does that mean for where you should be drafting them in a startup? Because undoubtedly these guys will get drafted on your dynasty rosters.
Oh, no.
Like the rosters are too deep not to have some of these guys on your team. So who's worth what? We're going to get into all of that.
All right. So we're each going to try to make 4 picks here. Kate, you get the first pick. Who are you picking?
All right. I hate to be cliche, or I don't know what the correct word is, but I think I'm going to go with Ezekiel Elliott,
okay,
which doesn't feel like the best pick, but Marcus, we know the fantasy upside's there, and we know that he is going to be there for the taking. I feel like once we have the first major injury of the season, he is going to swoop in, and he is going to probably cause a ruckus. Even last year, didn't exceed 1,000 scrimmage yards even, but did still manage 12 touchdowns in 3 of the last 4 seasons. Is he the Ezekiel Elliott of yesteryear? No. But I do still think that there's a distinct possibility that he comes in, and maybe he's just the touchdown guy, and all of a sudden you've got a, RB2 fringe RB3 every single week out of the blue.
Yeah, he was one of the names that I was going to consider for my first pick. And it makes sense, right? I think if and when he gets picked up by a team, his role is going to be short yardage banger, right? And that has a lot of value. Even in Dallas last year with, you mentioned not getting 1,000 scrimmage yards, still had dynasty value or, week to week value because of the touchdowns. He's being drafted right now as RB34. Players around him include Brian Robinson, Elijah Mitchell, Jamal Williams, who, funny enough, is basically going to have the same role, and Damian Harris. So I think that feels about right.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to go all out to get Ezekiel Elliott, but, if he falls far enough, and I do have a feeling that he is going to fall in dynasty startups, especially with the fact that he's still sitting out there as a free agent, the upside there just feels to outweigh the upside. Out of those guys, I'd probably take Brian Robinson.
Yep.
Jamal Williams, kind of a coin flip, because he does feel like he's a little bit more dependent on those touchdowns than Ezekiel Elliott at this point.
I know. I get it.
It feels about right. But again, given the upside, hard to fight with that.
All right. I'm glad that you took Zeke at number 1, though, because my top player is still on the board. It's Leonard Fournette, who, just remember, at this time last year, just got a massive extension by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And while he didn't have a great season, Katie had almost 1,200 yards from scrimmage, scored 6 touchdowns, and caught 73 passes. It was just clear that Tampa Bay, there's no need to hold on to a 28-year-old running back when you need to rebuild. They were in a lot of cap trouble. He hasn't caught on with the team yet, but because he's productive as a receiver, that's why I wanted him over Ezekiel Elliott, because I can see hey, after the draft, the team doesn't grab the running back. Let's just say the Dallas Cowboys. I could see Fournette coming in and getting 1,000 yards and catching 62 passes and scoring 7 or 8 touchdowns as soon as this year.
And, the interesting thing, Marcus, I think this applies to Ezekiel Elliott as well, is that all of these guys are kind of in a position like they're free agents. So they get to pick their landing spot once they get that offer. Now, that also means that they can say, I'm really just looking to play for a contender at this point. And then, suddenly that might mean that they're on one of the better offenses in the league and you're not feeling too shabby about that.
The other thing I love about Fournette right now is the cost. I mean, he's being drafted 10 spots behind Ezekiel Elliott in terms of just running back rankings. Ezekiel Elliott, RB34, Leonard Fournette, RB43. So I guess 9 spots. But it costs nothing to get him. And he's going around guys like Kenneth Gainwell, James Robinson, Michael Carter. It just feels like once Fournette picks his team, he's going to have some low-end RB2 value.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I'm kind of looking at Fournette and Zeke in this situation as kind of like a 1A, 1B.
Yeah. So just kind of looking at the board right now, I think Zeke and Fournette were pretty easily the top 2 options available. Now it gets tricky. Kate's on the clock with pick 103 when we get back. This episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Are you looking for a delicious treat but don't want all of the sugar and all of the calories? Then you need the absolute best tasting protein bar ever. It's Built Bar. You've got to try it. If you want to try to have a little bit of healthier snack, now we're getting into the summer, but you don't want to compromise on the taste, Built Bars are the best thing for you. I can't even tell you how amazing they taste. Seriously, it's so good for you. You're not even going to know that it's actually healthy. It's got 100% real dark chocolate. Again, real dark chocolate. Comes in so many great flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, one of my favorites, cookies and cream, which is one of my wife's favorite. Not sure how they do it because it tastes just like a candy bar, but it's only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, but a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't even have to wait to get a box. You could still go to built.com and order, boxes there if you want to order, some different flavors. But now you can run to your local Walmart or Sam's Club while you can still get your specialty flavors at built.com. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk into the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. They have 4-bar boxes of cookies and cream, double chocolate, coconut puff, sometimes some other flavors as well. But if you're close to a Sam's Club, like I am, you can grab a 13-bar box with some of the hit flavors, including brownie batter or churro puff. You can thank us later. Check out built.com for the full selection of Built Bars. All right, Kate, on the clock at 103. Who you picking?
Like you mentioned, it feels like the 102 is sort of the last pick that kind of felt right. The rest of this draft is going to be, I think, a chaotic mess. So why not start off that chaotic mess with Jerick McKinnon, 30-year-old running back who played with the Kansas City Chiefs last year. And Marcus, I don't know if you remember, but he was pretty darn productive there with the Kansas City Chiefs. Had 3 top 12 weeks to close out the season over the last 5 games. And a big part of that was due to his productivity in the receiving game, his ability to score touchdowns as a receiver. Now, I don't know if you've looked at the Chiefs depth chart lately. It's Isaiah Pacheco. It's Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who we know has fallen out of favor. LaMichael Pirine. Like, there is this 30-year-old running back out there who was really successful in this system. They've also lost some receivers, so we know there's still work to be done with that offense. They have MVS. They just signed Richie James.
Yep.
Of course, they have Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore. But I think when you look at the depth chart of running back and the depth chart of receivers, it stands to reason that this would be a good fit to bring him back. And if they do, I think he could be, maybe not as efficient in terms of his touchdown productivity, but I think he could be like a very big surprise player that you don't have to draft very highly at all.
Yeah, I mean, he gave you PPR value last year. 56 catches for 500 yards, scored 10 touchdowns. I mean, I gotta believe that he's gonna come back to Kansas City, and they're probably just waiting until after the draft to get it done. But assuming he does come back, yeah, I think he's one injury away from getting double-digit touches every single week. So I think that's a fantastic call by you.
RB60 right now in
Yeah,
Dynasty
nothing.
startup leagues.
Nothing.
Like very, very minimal draft capital being drafted around Jalen Warren, Jerome Ford out of Cleveland, like Samaje P. Ryan. Just none of these players are guys that you're splitting hairs at this point. And I do think the upside there is enough to give Jerick McKinnon the edge.
All right, it's time to get wild, Kate.
Woohoo!
Pick 104, going Carson Wentz.
Ooh, man.
First non-running back off the board. It's just that I don't think Carson Wentz is a starting quarterback in the NFL anymore. But that's not to say he doesn't belong on an NFL roster. In fact, he still might be a top 40 quarterback in the league right now. It just feels like he's waiting until after the draft to find his team, right? Because he wants to know, like, hey, where's the spot that I could go be a backup or potentially compete for a job? I don't know where that's at right now. And maybe he even waits longer, Kate. Like maybe he waits into August or even September and waits for an injury. But I could see him once he signs with the team starting and giving you not great production, but low end QB2 production. But if you're in a super flex league or a 2-quarterback league, you know how valuable that is.
Yeah, I think again, the upside could be there. Last year dealt with some injuries, and once he came back again, wasn't very productive. But I don't know if you remember, Marcus, the hot start that Carson Wentz got off to. Weeks 1 and 2, both games, 30 plus points, 3 QB1 performances, 3 top 12 performances in the first 5 weeks. Like, he's still got something in him. I don't know how much is left in the tank, but I think if he is a starting quarterback, honestly, that's just enough to give him any sort of edge because they're so difficult to find.
And it does feel like he's going to be the first quarterback that gets called once an injury happens. Like, and I think there are situations, Kate, where on the right team, he might even be able to give you more than low-end QB1 value. Just going to throw out a couple names, right? Let's say Justin Herbert, knock on wood. Justin Herbert goes down for 8 weeks, and the Chargers don't want to throw away the season. I think he could go there and have a lot of success, right? Or what if Jalen Hurts gets injured? Bring him in there, and he can give you some decent production. Or Buffalo. So I am keeping an eye on Carson Wentz because I do think he has some value left.
I think that's totally fair, Marcus. Next up.
Oh my gosh, this is getting crazy. 105.
105. This is probably the grossest part of the draft so far. I can't say that it's not. Looking at the wide receivers available right now, can I just give you guys a rundown here? It's Kenny Golladay, Robbie Anderson, Randall Cobb, Julio Jones. By the way,
Chosen Anderson is now the name.
My apologies. Chosen will not be chosen in this round, just as an FYI. But I'm going to look over at the tight end position, which, again, not super plentiful as most of these cases are. But I'm going to go for a total stash right here and hope for some upside down the road. What about 25-year-old Foster Moreau, who was really unfortunately
great pick.
Diagnosed. I don't know his formal diagnosis, so but diagnosed with cancer.
I think it's
Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Yeah.
But found that in his free agency process. There's been talks that maybe after he's recovered, the Saints might be down to consider signing him. But he is at the age where we see these tight ends start to come to their prime. And I think, when he's been given the opportunity in the absences of Darren Waller, why not Foster Moreau? Like, out of all of the remaining players, when I'm looking at upside, like, yeah, Foster Moreau might be very risky because of a situation, but the draft capital, there's no risk there. And I'm not sure there's any player left on the board that has as much upside.
That's a great pick. And it's a bummer for Foster Moreau because he was about to be paid in free agency. I feel awful for him. The good news is it seems like whatever the physical was with the Saints, they caught it early. The early reports have been fantastic so far. I hope this happens. Foster is such a good dude, and I think he's a really interesting player who started to play really well down the stretch for the Raiders last year. I love this pick. I'm really rooting for this one.
Same. There's no downside to rooting for Foster Moreau, whether it be personally or on the field.
All right, now we're in some tough spots.
It's getting murky waters, Marcus.
Oh boy, who do you go with? Matt Ryan, Kenny Galladay, Kenyon Drake. All right, I'm going with a wild one. I'm going Darrell Henderson here. Only 25 years old. Just actually finished out his rookie contract, right? Because he was drafted in 2019. It's kind of a weird situation. Was released mid-season. Hasn't signed with the team yet. Obviously, that's why we picked him here. But I do think there's still some talent here. And if he gets picked or signs with the right team, I could see Henderson having a role. I won't be surprised if a team, again, like the Dallas Cowboys that have a need at running back, bring him in post-draft or maybe as we get closer to the season. But we know Darrell Henderson is productive. He's been an NFL player, which is all I need to say is he's an NFL player. He's got some pins on the wall. I'm going Darrell Henderson.
I don't mind that, Marcus. I love Darrell Henderson in terms of, like, again, looking at upside. Like, dude is a very explosive player. The last season with the Rams, honestly, from Darrell Henderson on through, considering what was going on with Cam Akers, like, there was a lot of weirdness there in that entire team.
He started in week 1, and we did a show. I think it was on that Friday, right after the first game of the season. It's like, should you buy Darrell Henderson? He just got 18, touches in that game, played 82% of the snaps, got 100% of the workload. Like, is this
weird?
Finally happened? Started the next 3 games and then poof, gone.
Poof.
Yeah,
gone.
So, I mean, again, he costs nothing. He's available in your dynasty leagues. I promise you. I don't even need to ask. Even in the deepest of dynasty leagues, he's available. I'm just keeping an eye on him. Okay, you are back on the clock with pick 107. It's your final selection, and you'll make that pick when we get back. All right, Kate, why don't you go ahead and make your final pick here?
I'm like nauseous to make this pick. It's tough sleddings, Marcus. It's very tough sleddings. I'm going to go ahead and, I was trying to come up with one wide receiver that I might be willing to invest in. But I mean, looking at some of the names available, not a lot of upside here whatsoever. We're talking about guys like Kenny Galladay, Sammy Watkins, who no to all of these guys. Like, if I was going to draft one of them, it'd probably be Randall Cobb, just on the notion that maybe he's going to get some attention if we finally get an Aaron Rodgers trade. So I'm just pivoting from all of these free agent wide receivers, and I'm going to head back to Kareem Hunt, running back, who by recent reports, Cleveland was a little bit worried that he may have lost some speed. Saw, a decrease in touches in the Cleveland Browns system last year, but he was a solid complement to Nick Chubb throughout their tenure there. I do think that there's room, and I've said all along, my favorite landing spot for him in terms of, fitting him into a situation that we've already seen him be successful in, would be pairing him with a guy like Ken Walker in Seattle. Like, we already have the guy that can break away these runs. Kareem Hunt, I think, could be a decent change of pace guy. And I do think there would be, room for him to catch a couple of balls out of the backfield. I think that would be an interesting fit. And the potential for that fit is still sort of there. So
This is so bad.
it's gross. It's bad.
Yeah, I thought he looked pretty zapped last year in terms of athleticism, but he can play on all three downs. You can use him as a pass catcher. It's just with him, I think his fit is even more limited because of some of the off the field stuff. Like, teams just aren't going to be interested to bring in that dude, right? So it's tough. Probably the best landing spot for him would be just back in Cleveland on a reduced deal.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
What a sad ending to this show. I was really excited about this show until it started, and I was like, "Oh, the remaining free agents are not pretty." But again, y'all are in the situation where you're probably going to be drafting these guys in your startup, so the conversations have to be had.
All right, are you ready for the most ridiculous one I've had so far?
Yes, please let it be a receiver.
It is a receiver.
Okay.
Olamide Zacchaeus. I believe
I was good. That was literally the one wide receiver. I was like, well,
all right,
let's hear it. Make your pitch.
Still only 25 years old. Has gotten better. His production has gotten up in 3 straight seasons. He caught 40 passes last year for 500 yards and 3 touchdowns. Heard some rumblings that the Eagles were maybe going to bring him in this week just to see, if he could fill a role. I mean, I think his arrow is still on the way up, where every other receiver that I would have picked, like Julio Jones is 34, was not good last year. T.Y. Hilton only played a few games. Jarvis Landry is pretty clearly done, right? He's the only one that potentially still has more value to gain, and that's why I'm taking him here at 108.
I think that's a really great way to describe the situation in terms of, his potential arrow still being on the upward trajectory, because you're right. Most of these guys just feel zapped, and like, you don't want to make an investment in a lot of these players, but he is a total flyer, as is the rest of every single pick you can make. But still at least a question mark in terms of what is his actual upside. Now, like, for fantasy, hasn't been overly productive.
No.
Averaged 6.6 PPR points per game last year. Rich.
Yep.
He's had just one top 12 week so far in his career, but he's had one. So that's a plus.
But doesn't it feel like
if he's in a really good offense, like a Philadelphia Eagles, the potential could be there for a role in the right situation.
It also feels like the Chargers, right? Like, if the Chargers had an injury to one of their receivers, I could see him coming in and being the wide receiver 3 and giving him some value that way. So again, it's not pretty, but that's what it is. Just to recap, Kate's picks: Ezekiel Elliott, Jerick McKinnon, Foster Moreau, and Kareem Hunt. My picks were Leonard Fournette, Carson Wentz, Darrell Henderson, and Zacchaeus. I gotta say, I think you won it with the McKinnon and the Foster Moreau pick. So great job by you, Kate.
It's kind of like you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. That's what we played today, and I'm excited to have won my stupid prize.
That is it for today's show. Thank you guys for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. Now make your second listen to Locked On NFL Scouting Show with the Draft Dudes. From free agency to the draft, salary cap management, and more. Join NFL experts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino as they take you through what it's like to build a successful NFL franchise every Monday through Friday. Find Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for watching our show. Please check us out on YouTube. Go follow Kate at Kate Magdziuk. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we'll see you guys next time.